Hello, hello, American Crochet Association. Salena here, founder, host, lead educator with the ACA, and I've got a brand new chat for you guys today. It is going to outline an article that I just published, and a link to this article with everything that I'm mentioning here today can be found in the video description. So today I just wanted to share some of my favorite tips and tricks and things that I've learned through the years so that hopefully you will feel like you know everything that there is to know about blocking your crochet pieces. If you're watching live, come on over, say hey, say hello, tell me where you're viewing from. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback on this topic, just go ahead and post it. And whether I'm here live or on the replay, I'll get back to you as soon as I see the comment, okay? So some of the things I'm going to cover in this article are what is blocking? I think that's pretty important. We got to define this thing first. What should you block? So I'm going to go over a few different types of general kind of categories and things to think about as you're deciding what you are and are not going to block. I even have some free patterns to share so that you guys can try some of these blocking techniques that I share with you guys today. And last but not least, what tools do you need to actually block things? Now, before we dive into any of that, just know that I do have some links. They're Amazon affiliate links if you want to use them. But I also have some free tool ideas of things that you may already have around your house, things that I totally use whenever I block some crochet items. That should help you. So you may not have to invest any money at all, okay? All right, so if you have any of those questions, what is blocking? What should you block? What tools do you need to block? These are great questions. This is a fantastic starting point. Maybe you know a few things, or maybe you're really looking to just kind of get a 101 overview so that you can get the ball rolling on understanding what this thing is and when to apply it. This is actually a topic that, as a crocheter, I completely avoided for most of my crochet life. I literally thought, you know what? Blocking sounds complicated. It sounds like something knitters do with their things that they knit, and it is not something that I'm going to do as a crocheter. So I'm just going to ignore that. I don't make anything that needs to be blocked anyway. And then through the years, I started making, or when I started crocheting, I made things like baby blankets or just general blankets or scarves or pillow covers. I was making things that arguably maybe never really needed to be blocked. And that's maybe why my thought process on blocking was so limited. It wasn't until, maybe the past 10 years or so when I started thinking about using different kinds of yarns, making different kinds of things, more wearables, sweaters, garments, maybe motifs, maybe working with thread. It wasn't until I started venturing into those items that I found that some of the items that I was making, maybe they didn't always lay flat. Or maybe, I would make like a wrap or a shawl, and I'd make this thing and I'd put all this effort into creating this nice fabric. But then when I was done, the fabric was kind of scrunched, right? Or maybe just certain things that I was making, they would curl at the ends, or they weren't behaving. They weren't laying flat. So I realized as I started making more things, I started making more things with different kinds of yarns that were creating different kinds of fabric, that I wanted my fabric to perform better, to look better, to feel better, or just different at the very least. And so that's when I started kind of diving into this blocking subject. So here we have it. I'm just going to go down in order. Again, I am kind of reading this a little bit verbatim, but I do have some additional feedback. So again, if you don't dig chats, click on the link in the video description here, and you'll get almost this entire chat just in typed form. So hopefully that will help. So first and foremost, what is blocking? Okay, blocking, the short answer is that it's something that you do to the fabric that you create with crochet when you're done. So when you're done literally means something as simple as maybe I'm making a lot of little granny squares or a lot of little motifs, all these tiny things. Whether or not I join them together when I'm done, it's lots of little things that I have finished or fastened off. Maybe I want to block all of those. Maybe I'm making some kind of sweater and it's in all these different pieces. Maybe I want to block all those pieces. That way the fabric is uniform before I put it together. Or maybe I make something like a poncho and it's all one piece because it's a rectangle shaped poncho or something like that. Maybe I want to block that when it's done, so that way the corners don't curl up or the fabric lays flat, or this really nice open lacy fabric that I've created. Maybe I really want to highlight all of that and I don't want it to look scrunched. So those are times when you would block, when you're done with something. So done could either mean, again, those little individual pieces, like all the different parts of the sweater, the sleeves, the back, the two fronts, or it could mean a project as a whole when you're done, whatever that may be, a wall hanging, a t-shirt, something like that. Now, depending on the fiber that you use, fiber means, you know, where did it come from? Did it come from a plant? Did it come from an animal? Is it synthetic? And the end result that you're looking to achieve. Now, end result means, what do you want it to do? What do you want it to look like? Does it need to be absolutely precision perfect? Maybe you just need something to be perfect for a picture or for a gift or something like that. So again, depending on the fiber, depending on the project type, depending on the end result that you're looking to achieve, there are just a few different blocking methods. Now, arguably, there's lots of different ways things can be blocked. It's kind of like, how do you wash a t-shirt? It's like, well, I could tell you 10 different ways to wash a t-shirt. You know, you could wash a t-shirt by dumping dish soap on yourself and walking out in the backyard and hosing yourself off. Is that going to be the best method to wash your t-shirt? No, but it's a method. You could wear it in the bathtub, you know, and so anyway, I'm being a little funny, but I'm just trying to say that there are lots of different methods to wash, block, wet, set things. And I really tried my best to distill that down into just, I feel, the two different methods as a whole. So when it comes to blocking, you can either wet block or you can dry block. So let's start with wet blocking. Wet blocking means whatever the item is, whatever the finished product is, it gets wet first. And then you manipulate it into some kind of shape. So let's say you've got granny squares and you've made a ton of granny squares and you want them all to be the exact same shape and size, right? So maybe you decide, I'm going to wet all of them first, and then I'm going to lay them flat to dry and pin them into shape. Okay, it starts with the fabric being wet first, and then whatever you do next, that happens next, and then it goes through the drying process. Now, dry blocking is the opposite. What am I going to do to this? Does it need to be a certain shape? Am I pinning it in some way? What am I doing to this? What do I want it to be? You're doing that manipulation first, and then you're applying moisture in some way. So these two things are different for a lot of different reasons. There's pros and cons to each one of them. And really there's no one right or wrong answer, whether you're going to wet block or dry block. Okay. It really depends on, again, fiber, what's your project and things like that. But some general tips, just some, things that I've learned the hard way. Wet blocking may not be the thing that you do for really large projects. And what I mean by that is, typically with wet blocking, you're submerging your fabric. It is soaked. It is wet in some way, right? And then you kind of pin it. So let's say you make a sweater. Well, the sweater may not weigh a lot, right? Maybe it's just a size medium and you're like, it's not very big. So maybe you submerge it. Well, now you've got to wring out all that extra moisture and transfer it and pin it in some way, right? But because it's a sweater and because it's pretty big, it's holding all of that excess moisture, and you wringing it out is going to really distort the fabric look and size. So you think that you're blocking it, but really you're not blocking it. You're just kind of distorting that fabric. So it's maybe going to be stretching it out to be two sizes too big. Maybe one sleeve is going to be longer than the other. So size is definitely going to be a factor as well. But now with dry blocking, I think that there are some basic methods you can use for dry blocking. Like, for example, I want to take that same sweater and maybe just, the ends curl, or, maybe one sleeve is, kind of a little wonky compared to the other one or something like that. Maybe I do just want to lay it flat on a towel and then, manipulate it into shape. And then maybe I want to put a wet, hot towel on top of it, or a towel on top of it and then go over it with a steam iron or something. So we're going to get into a little bit more in terms of the tools next. But just know that I'm putting the most basic terms and definitions here for wet blocking versus dry blocking, because there's a lot of different methods and there's a lot of different strategies to both of them. And there is no one right answer for each one of them. It really just depends on a lot of the different characteristics of what you're doing. So the last thing to think about when you think, what is blocking and when to do it and why and how and all of that. Blocking may be something that you do once, like a one and done. Maybe you made a tapestry that's going to hang on the wall. Yeah, probably one and done in terms of blocking. Maybe you made some kind of granny square thing, a garment or a blanket or something like that. Here's where it gets a little interesting, something you think about as well in terms of blocking and just, I guess, general care. How often is this finished project going to be used? How often is it going to be laundered? Is it going to get a lot of wear and a lot of use? Is it something that maybe one day is going to go in the washing machine or go in the dry cleaner? Is it think about what its life needs to be. And I think that's going to help you to determine how often you may have to kind of repeat some of these blocking sessions or not. Because again, it may not be just kind of a one and done type thing. All right, before I move on to what should I block, I see a lot of you guys are here. And so I just wanted to give some shout outs to Samantha, who's watching from Colorado. I'm doing great today. Thank you for joining. I'm so glad that you're here. Hello to Maribel. So good to see you. Oh, and you guys are saying hey to each other in the comments. I love that. I love when you guys get friendly. It's so sweet. We're just a big community here. Okay, next topic in this is what should I block? And the short answer is that not everything that you crochet is going to require some kind of blocking. It may not at all. So in fact, some fibers are not really going to perform well to being submerged in water or put under a steam iron or something like that. It may not make any difference. It may be a lot of extra work that may just degrade your fabric. So there are lots of different fibers in the crochet world. That's a fantastic problem, right? But just know that every single fiber, whether it be a natural fiber like cotton or wool, maybe it's a synthetic fiber like acrylic or nylon, and maybe it's some kind of version or variation of the two of those. Maybe it's a blend. Maybe it's cotton, wool, acrylic, something like that. So really the best thing to do to determine, hey, should I block this? Can I block this? Really read the yarn label, understand what's in your yarn, and then really get a feel for what those different fibers need, what's going to enhance that fiber and what's going to hinder the fiber. Because that may help you to decide how and if you even, consider any kind of blocking technique as well. If you do want some more information about yarn, especially in terms of substitution, maybe there's a project that you love, but it's made with cotton and cotton's not going to do what you want it to do. Maybe you want it to be with wool or acrylic. Here is a great article that gives you guys more information, not only about yarn, but understanding some different substitution and characteristics as well. So that'll be really helpful. Okay, so when considering what should I block, I think that there's a few categories to think about. I already talked about fiber a little bit. So again, read your yarn label, look at what's in the yarn, what's it made of, and look at, what the characteristics are for those fibers to see how you can best care for them and whether or not you can even block them. But here I want to talk about category a little bit again too. Category is really going to matter. You really, think about your finished project and what it should be, what it needs to be, what it needs to look like. Now, I have two projects right here. They're both free patterns on our blog, so you can definitely find them. I'll also link them down here in the video description as well. And I had some advice on both of these. Now, first, you may think that any kind of motif, maybe it needs to be blocked. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, maybe it's entirely up to you. Now, the first thing that I want to share with you is this Granny Square market bag. Wow, I'm too close. You can barely see it. This is made with a few different granny squares that are seamed together. I did not block these squares, but I didn't block them because of the fiber that I made this with. It was a cotton blend. It draped really nicely, and each one of the squares laid flat. They weren't curling up. They weren't too tight. They weren't doing anything strange. And whenever I made these, they all came up to be about the exact same size. So I didn't feel that blocking for any of this needed to happen. Next, this is a tote bag. So maybe as a person who writes patterns, after I wrote this pattern, if I wanted some really good pictures, maybe I would have blocked this in some way just to make it look absolutely perfect for those pictures, right? Or maybe I might want to block something like this with some kind of starch or something that stiffens this fabric if it's too loose or too light. So blocking can also mean stiffening a fabric or helping to make it a little bit more loose. So maybe there's a little bit of care and washing instructions involved in that as well. Because again, it's all about what are we doing to the fabric when it's finished. So for this project, could I have blocked it? Sure, for any of those reasons that I just mentioned, right? But I didn't block this because I didn't feel it was necessary because of the size, because of the shape, because of the fiber that I used, and because I thought it looked great in pictures, so I didn't bother with it. Also, the last thing to say about something like this is that it's a bag. So if you're just making this at home and you're like, good enough, I'm going to use it as a bag. After you start using this bag a little bit, it's going to naturally kind of maybe relax in some places and become a little bit more uniform. So it's going to naturally kind of change shape a little bit in a way that whatever you might have done with blocking might really just dissipate because it's in use. Okay, so here's one item. So here's another item that I wanted to share with you that I recently went through some blocking, a little bit of blocking on this, okay? So here's another free crochet pattern on the site. It is the Easy Bucket Hat. Super cute, right? So I made this using 2 strands of yarn held together. Again, you guys can get all the details on this pattern. You can view it for free on our site. All that jazz, right? But after I made this, I wanted the fabric to be dense and I wanted it to be a little stiff, but not so stiff that it wasn't going to feel like a piece of fabric, right? I don't want this to feel like wood. I want this to feel like maybe a nice pair of jeans, thick, but still a little flexible. So after I created this, again, holding 2 strands of yarn together, both natural fibers, so a cotton yarn and a linen yarn, it was a little stiff. So I did wet this. I did want it to be a little softer. So I put a little bit of fabric softener just in a sink and I submerged this with water and I really kind of just, soaked this thing with that fabric softener. Then I kind of wrung it out and then I laid it flat to dry into shape. And one of the main reasons I laid it flat to dry was that I didn't want the brim to be all crinkly. I wanted it to have a nice wave to it, a nice ripple to it, but I didn't want any of the increases to form these really specific points. So again, after I wrang all the water out, I laid it flat to dry and I didn't pin it. I just laid it on a towel. I didn't have to stretch it or pull it or anything. I just wanted it to lay flat to dry so that the brim would be this really nice crescent shape and it would be flat. And then when I did that, it dried to where it didn't have all of these really harsh, points to it, or really harsh, more zigzaggy points to it. So that was just one way that I kind of blocked this. Some really gentle methods that I think really helped enhance this particular fabric. So I thought about what I was making, a hat. What do I want the fiber to do? What do I want it to look like? What do I want to feel like? And then I determined different methods in terms of blocking to see how I can get that look and that feel. Okay. All right. So those are just 2 projects. If you guys have if you guys have specific questions about other projects, like should I block this? When should I block this? How should I block this? Feel free to post those questions here or come on over to our community on Facebook and ask questions there. Questions are always welcome there. After you read this article, I hope you read it and let me know what you think. If you have any specific questions about what to block and how to block it, let me know. Okay, now here is the fun part of this chat, okay? You may be going, all right, I got a definition of blocking now. I'm thinking about categories. I'm thinking about fiber. I'm thinking about fabric. What tools do I need to block? Now, There's going to be a lot of fancy tools. I'm going to show you some of my favorites, some really specific blocking tools with links to get them if you want. You're welcome to use my Amazon affiliate links. Thank you if you do, but you don't have to. There are some just general household items that you can use for blocking. I told you about this. I just use towels, fabric softener, and water. I mean, everybody has at least a version of that, right? So you can just start with things like towel, laundry, soaps or solutions, maybe a spray bottle, maybe even a steam iron, right? So you can just start with things like that. Again, it depends on your fabric, your look, the feel, what you're trying to do. So, it may just be that you're using a combination of any one of those things. But if you want some more specific things, if you're looking for a specific look, if you maybe want to do some dry blocking, because we talked a little bit about dry blocking versus wet blocking, I think blocking boards are going to be a really good tool to invest in. Whether you're making just one project that has to be absolutely perfect, or maybe you make lots of different projects in a certain category and you're looking for the best, you want them to look their best. For example, maybe you crochet Christmas ornaments or snow. I have a friend who crochets snowflakes and she starches them when she's done and she gives them away as gifts. A blocking board is perfect for her because you want all of those to be the same shape, the same size. You want them to be flat. So a blocking board is really going to work. Now, blocking boards like this one right here, I love this wooden one because wood is a very solid foundation. And then that paired with these metal rods, it's going to hold that item into shape. Now, this particular blocking board right here is about 12 inches by 12 inches, so it's relatively small, meaning it's for smaller projects or small areas, right? So you're not going to put an Afghan on this, right? You're going to put smaller projects on it. Now, what I like about wood and metal is that it's really going to hold the shape of the fabric. So there are going to be some fabrics and some materials, like for example, there's foam mats, and we'll get to that in just a second. Here, they're down here below. So foam, even with pins, depending on whatever item you're pinning, maybe it's so dense and heavy and you're trying to pin it into a shape. So those pins aren't going to hold into the foam. They're going to turn inward, which means it's not really going to do the job that you want it to do. So if you're looking for some precision, if you're looking for specific points and things like that, if you're looking to really create shape, you may go with something like wood and metal. For larger items that, maybe I need 3 feet of space. Maybe I need to do an entire shawl and it's 4 feet across. Maybe I need to do an entire sweater and I want to kind of dry block it. I do suggest these foam mats, simply because that's the material, for the size. That's what you're going to get. And what I love about these foam mats is that they're puzzle pieces. So you can use just the 12 inch by 12 inch size, or you can start piecing them together because they're puzzle pieces, and you can pin something far larger if you want to. What I like about these is that they're still metal pins. Those metal pins go into the foam mat. So depending on the foam, you kind of want to get a better foam for this. You want to get a dense foam because whenever you prick the foam, you don't want it to create such a big hole that it's like after a few pinning sessions, the holes are just, kind of like in drywall when you're hanging pictures and it's like too many holes. It's like, it kind of degrades. So be careful about the materials you use or the types of foam that you invest in, because some of those foams are going to degrade and some of them are really going to hold their shape. It's almost like when you pull the pin out, like you can barely see where the pinhole is anymore. So you can use single pins for these, kind of like there's just single rods for these. But what I like about these pinning mats is that you can even get, like this particular one that I found, it comes with individual pins, so T-pins. It's literally a pin that looks like a T on top. Or you can use what I like. I mean, I think of them as comb pins because it's essentially a row of pins in a straight line, but then there's like a handle on top. So it looks like a comb, but with needles. So that way, if you're pinning straight lines and you don't want to, it's like 1 pin, 2 pin, 3, you can pin a row of pins at the same time. So it just helps to create those lines a little better. So here's a few different pinning mats. If you need them, you can get them small and wood with metal rods, or you can get really large ones with lots of different pinning apparatuses that are foam, and I've got a few solutions for you here. Okay, now we talked a little bit before about, what is blocking, wet methods, dry methods, things like that. Some fabrics may need to be soaked, and maybe they need to be softer, or maybe they need to be stiffer. So as you're going through the blocking process, if you're thinking ahead too, like this needs to be softer, it needs to be stiffer, there's a few different washing solutions to use. I found a few just to take a peek at that I thought were pretty economical, and I liked where they were going with it. Now, some natural fibers like wool, it may need to be soaked in some kind of solution to make it a little more soft, or to help keep it from felting or something like that. So I did find this solution that I often see at my local yarn shop that I know knitters use, because knitters often use those natural fibers and those animal fibers, and they want their items that they use this really nice, expensive yarn to last a long time. So that's kind of where I got this particular solution from. Now, if you just want a really nice, natural, maybe it doesn't have to be natural. The reason I said natural is that you want a gentle detergent. If you want to maybe wash and soften whatever it is just a little bit, I found this particular all natural detergent. I liked that it doesn't have dyes in it. It doesn't have all these things that may take away from the color of your project, that may degrade the fiber, because whatever you're soaking your fabric in, the color may change, the look and feel of the fabric may change. So definitely take a peek at that. And again, those are just two solutions for you, depending on whatever result you're looking for and whatever fiber you're using. Okay, and last tool but not least, maybe you have an iron that already has a steam setting, and in that case, maybe you're comfortable just using that. Now, I am not suggesting you take your crochet item and you put an iron on top of it. Do not do that, please. If anything, there's probably some care instructions that, or you can read your manual for whatever iron you have, or whatever handheld steam wand you get. Because some things you do not put an iron directly on it. And even your yarn label will give you some more of this information. It may even tell you on the yarn label, do not put an iron on this. Like, for example, acrylic, it's plastic. It will burn if you put an iron close to it. Heat will make it melt. So you definitely don't want to do that. So what I'm suggesting with this steam iron right here is that this is a great tool for dry blocking, right? I don't want to submerge this entire thing. I don't want it to be, distorted because it's really big or something like that. Maybe I'm going to take my sweater or my shawl or my wrap, and I don't want to completely submerge this thing. I want to very delicately, maybe it's this beautiful half circle shawl and I want to take beautiful pictures of it. I'm going to pin it into the shape that it needs to be, and then I'm going to use the steam iron, and then I'm going to gently go over that fabric with this steam handheld steamer right here. And that way it's going to apply that dampness and that heat to the fabric that you need, and then however you pinned it, as it dries, it's going to naturally take that shape. So that's where this tool is going to come in handy. All right, I gave you guys a ton of information. Hopefully you feel a little more informed about what blocking is, when to do it, why to do it, how to do it. I really hope that this is just a gentle introduction that's not scary, that makes you feel informed. And if you've never tried blocking, or if you want to try blocking maybe in a new way, you want to shed some new light on your blocking skills, I do have some tips for you. And my tips start with, maybe you don't know how to block yet, and maybe you don't want to apply it to your finished projects. You can just try different blocking techniques with whatever fabric or whatever fiber you feel your finished project might be, just with creating swatches. So if you're interested in learning more about what a swatch is and you want some patterns to follow to create swatches, and then you can take these swatches and go through a variety of wet blocking or dry blocking techniques just to see what happens, then I do have some more information here for you. All right, guys, that's all I have to share. That's blocking basics. Hopefully you guys feel really informed. And with that, I'm just going to take a minute and see who's here and what you guys are saying, and answer any questions that you may have as long as I'm here live. Maribel says, love that market bag. This is literally one of my favorite market bags. I love granny squares. I have tons of granny square patterns. And so I'm always coming up with new things to make with granny squares. So this particular granny square market bag is free to view on our site, and I'll also link it so you can check out the pattern for free. And after you make it, I'd love to hear, depending on the fiber you use and depending on how your fabric turns out, whether or not you block it, okay? Let's see, who else is here? Yuri is here. I have a baby blanket that I've made with Red Heart yarn and my upper left corner is wonky. Would dry blocking or wet blocking work better? That's an interesting question, and I have more questions for you. So you say Red Heart yarn. Red Heart yarn is a brand. So I need to know exactly what line of Red Heart you're talking about, because they have, through the decades, hundreds probably of different yarn types. So is it Red Heart an acrylic yarn? Is it Red Heart a cotton yarn? Is it Red Heart? So really, I need to know what fiber is involved in this yarn. And then knowing what fiber is involved in that yarn, then you know how susceptible it can be to blocking. Because as I said before in this article, acrylic is not really going to block. You can kind of manipulate it a little bit, like maybe making sure that corners are going to lay flat instead of curl. That's probably something you can do with certain blocking techniques. Like, yeah, maybe just soaking that corner and laying it flat to dry. Or maybe just laying the corner like on a towel and then putting a very hot, wet towel on top of it and letting that dry. Or maybe, putting the corner between two towels and then ironing the top of it. So there's lots of different techniques that you can use. But it all depends on what the fiber is. So that would be my question to you. Oh, Mary Bell does like that bucket hat. I'm so glad. Thank you. Ethel is here and watching from Arkansas. Thank you for checking in. Maribel says, really great information. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you think so. I'm so glad. And again, I really hope that this article is not scary. It's not overwhelming. I don't want you to feel like you have to buy a ton of things. Hopefully this article just helps you to maybe have some better definitions about these different terms in the crochet world and the blocking world. And hopefully, really, if you just start with crocheting a swatch, maybe it's just a double crochet swatch, 10 stitches by 10 rows with maybe a few of your favorite yarns. Maybe if you just start with that, you'll get a better idea for what blocking is and all of the different ways that you can use blocking to maybe enhance your finished projects. So I'd love to hear what you think. Okay, Yuri's giving me a little bit more information. Yuri does say acrylic line of Red Heart yarn. And so, yeah, I would definitely say that because it's acrylic, those tips that I gave you about dry blocking, I would definitely start with dry blocking. And if anything, if you're ever unsure of what to do, I think that starting with dry blocking and then seeing if those techniques work, depending on your fabric and your fiber and what it is, what your goals are, start with that, because you can always move to wet blocking, and you can always move to wet blocking in smaller sections. Even if maybe you're just, not, you don't have to completely dunk and submerge things in water. That doesn't always necessarily mean wet blocking. Again, how big is your item? Do you need to transfer it? What do you need to do? So always start with dry blocking techniques first and then go from there. Whew. All right. Yuri. Oh, okay. I get it. Acrylic is hard to manipulate. Thank you. This is so helpful. Yeah, acrylic is not like cotton. And here, I'm going to show you just a picture up here. This is cotton thread right here. And then another image that I have, this is cotton as well. So this is a great example of what cotton can do. This is unblocked right here, and you can see that it looks a little more round. It's not that really perfect kind of square look. And this one over here, this granny square over here, I completely submerged that in water. I didn't put any kind of solution on it. So no laundry detergent, no softener, no stiffener. And then I just put this on my wooden blocking mat with metal pins until it completely dried. And you can see that, look at that. It looks just a little larger. It looks completely square. The corners are very well defined. That's cotton, and cotton will do that. Cotton will hold a shape. Acrylic, once it dries, it may not hold that shape. So there may be other things that you have to do other than just wetting it to make it really hold its shape. So it really just depends. And so yeah, start with a few dry blocking methods and then go from there. And Yuri, that's another thing that I want to say is that if you already have this finished item and you're not sure about the best blocking techniques, always start with a swatch. If you need more information on what a swatch is, or you want some different techniques for swatch, man, this is a long article. I had to scroll for a while. I do have some more information for you here. And that way you've got this beautiful finished product and you're like, man, but it's doing something that I want to change. It's curling. It's not something, right? You can make a small swatch with the exact yarn that you used. Maybe you make a small section using the exact same stitch pattern and then go through some blocking techniques with that small swatch. And that way, if you do go, oops, I shouldn't have done that, it's on that small swatch. You didn't ruin or you didn't do anything that you can't take back to your finished project. So always start with a swatch. All right, guys, that's all the questions. I think I said hey to everyone. As you guys are watching this on the replay, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you thought this was a good topic and you learned some things, if you could either tag a crochet friend in the comments or share this video in at least one place that you enjoy crochet. If you think they'll get some benefit from this as well, I would really appreciate it. Also, again, this is an entire article, so definitely click on the link in the video description to read more, to get more resources, to get more information, to pin this, to share it with a friend, anything that you need to do. All right? Thank you guys so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. Peace, love, crochet. See you next time. Bye-bye.